podcast. It's Creaker's introduction to roping. So I started out, I just put my rope around this tire, and before I even dallied off, I moved it around with my arm. I drug it towards him so he could see it. So then if he was going to have a big reaction, I would know about it before I had something dallied off to him. So then I ask him to back up and kind of drag it at him, because obviously that's one thing they're going to have to do is back up with weight. And then I did the same thing, like from the side. I pulled the tire before I dallied it off to him and moved around and pulled it and moved around kind of to get it to where the tire was almost following him for a minute, because that's dragging a calf or whatever. So after I make sure that he's not going to have a big explosion and freak out because the tire's trying to attack him, then I do the same thing, except for I'm dallied off this time and I'm actually using him to pull the tire. I'm not pulling the tire. He's 100% pulling the tire on his own. I'm just doing little movements, practicing dallying, undallying, moving the tire a few steps, having him kind of pivot around with the tire attached to him, just practicing, seeing what his reaction is going to be to the feeling. Roping can get dangerous pretty quick, especially if you have an unconfident horse. So I'm going to really try to make sure that Creaker is super confident with the rope all over his body. He needs to learn how to move his rear end away from the rope instead of into the rope, and like kind of spin out of situations. I do not recommend going and if you're not confident with a rope, or if confident training a colt, going and mixing the two, because it can turn into a pretty nasty rodeo pretty fast. People end up missing digits all the time from roping accidents, so like it ain't nothing to be messing around with. It's pretty darn serious stuff. I personally am not the best at roping, but I do rigging, tree work rigging. I'm the ground bitch. My husband's a climber. I do all the rope running, so I am pretty good at running rope. Your saddle horn is kind of like your steiny or your porter wrap. But so then I go and swing the rope over and around him. I want to make sure it touches him. I want him to see it getting swung over his head and be cool with it before I throw it, just to, again, if there's going to be a reaction, I can see what it is. I have another video where I do basically all this stuff on the ground with Creaker before I do it on his back, so he's already been exposed to a rope and a rope dragging things, but now I'm doing it from his back, so it's a whole different experience. So leg cues are super important for when you're roping, because you're doing a lot of moving with getting your horse to move with your legs. This kind of helps put all the different stuff that Creaker's been working on individually into a bigger picture for him. Like, oh, well, now I know why we do so much of this other stuff, because I'm putting it all together to be able to do this. I want to make sure that Creaker stays moving, that he's not just in one area. I want to swing it around his head while he moves, just get him really extremely used to the basics of what happens when you're a horse that gets roped off of. Creaker hasn't been worried about the rope or anything like that, and it can be normal if you like prepare your horse correctly, but it's not how every horse is going to react to it. So don't just go and hop on a horse and start trying to rope off of it if it's never been exposed to ropes or any of that stuff. It's a lot of work to get a roping horse. So now the next little exercise that we're doing, this wasn't the same day, but I just put it into one video instead of making like a million small videos, is I just hang a tire. I started with a small tire, but you can do bigger tires as well. Again, I get the rope or the tire swinging with the rope, and before I dally it off, make sure they know that it's swinging, but you get it swinging, get the momentum. Then you take your dallies, so then when it hits, when you're dallied off, they get the sensation of something hitting the end of their rope a little bit. And it's also good practice for a person who, like me, who's not a good roper, to practice dallying off with weight on your rope. And you can practice doing the backing up and turning and a lot of things that you would do while you're roping with the tire stationary before you move it around, just to help get your horse more confident and yourself more confident too with things if you're inexperienced. Again, these are just a lot of small steps that I do to prepare my horses for what it might be like to be roped off of. Teaching horses different things is not always pretty while you're teaching it. Sometimes you really have to get on them. Sometimes your horse is going to react in ways that you don't like, but that's part of training as you work through that and you focus on the long-term goal. You don't get caught up in, well, the horse isn't doing everything perfect right now. You take into consideration where the horse's training is at, where their mind is at. And Creeker's young. He's still a goofy, curious baby in a lot of ways. So he handles things very well. He doesn't get super nervous. He doesn't get worried. He gets more curious about new things. But I also let him be curious. I don't try to take his curiosity out of him. I want him to be curious about new things. And so the last clip of the video will be him playing with and exploring the tire before I even started swinging it around near him and giving him the chance to, explore it and play with it and see that it's not anything to be worried about. Makes a big difference when I'm having it right in front of his face. So anyways, yeah, this is just the first few steps I take on exposing my horse to being a roping horse, I guess.